Module 4, Transportation and Transfer. Upon completion of Module 4, participants should be able to describe how ethanol-blended fuels are transported and transferred, as well as where the most likely points for error in these actions exist. Given the increased use of ethanol and ethanol-blended fuel, it is essential that emergency responders be able to quickly and effectively identify their presence at the scene of an incident. It is important to recognize the proper placarding and marking of ethanol-blended fuels. Proper identification of ethanol and ethanol-blended fuels can ensure proper steps are taken so incidents are managed effectively. Most ethanol transported from an ethanol production facility is denatured fuel ethanol with 2 to 5% hydrocarbon like natural gasoline. A small quantity of ethanol leaves the production facility undenatured, also known as neat ethanol, for industrial use or export. Less than 1% of gallons shipped from an ethanol production facility are shipped as ethanol flex fuel, 51 to 85% ethanol by volume. The ultimate destination determines the mode of transport leaving a production facility. Denatured fuel ethanol is delivered to a liquid products terminal, an oil refinery, or directly to a retail fueling station. When shipped to a liquid products terminal or oil refinery, transportation by rail is the most common. However, cargo tank truck transport may be used for short shipping distances. Cargo tank truck transport is used to move product from liquid product terminals to retail fueling stations and, to a lesser extent, from an oil refinery to deliver to retail fueling stations. Ethanol and ethanol-blended fuels are identified using DOT placards and markings. The U.S. Department of Transportation, DOT, requires that vehicles transporting hazardous materials, also known as dangerous goods, must display the appropriate DOT hazard class placard. These placards must be displayed on all sides of the transporting vehicle. Ethanol-blended fuels and gasoline are transported in various types of containers, including cargo tank trucks, rail tank cars, freighter ships or barges, and pipelines. DOT has classified hazardous materials according to their primary hazard and has assigned standardized symbols to identify the classes. Materials are grouped by their major hazardous characteristics. However, many materials will have other hazards as well. Ethanol and ethanol-blended fuels are in the flammable liquids category or DOT Class 3 hazardous materials. Placards for flammable liquids have a red background with a white flame and a 3 at the bottom along with their corresponding identification number. The same placarding and marking protocols are used for highway and rail shipments. Ethanol-blended fuels up to and including E10 will display an identification 1203 flammable placard. Ethanol blends of E15 to E85 are included under the 3475 identification. The 3475 placard covers ethanol blends from E11 to E94. Denatured fuel ethanol, E95 to E99 blends, will display a 1987 flammable placard. The 1170 placard is for undenatured or neat ethanol, E100. The DOT Emergency Response Guide, ERG, which includes this placarding information, is used as a resource for emergency responders when attending to an incident involving hazardous materials and dangerous goods. A safety data sheet, or SDS, will also provide key safety information and product characteristics. The National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 704 marking system used for identifying hazardous materials found within facilities is based on the 704 diamond. First tentatively adopted as a guide in 1960, This system is revised regularly and has been adopted by NFPA as a standard. The NFPA 704 system uses colors, numbers from 0 to 4, and special symbols to indicate the presence of hazardous materials. Each colored square indicates the type of hazard, and the higher the number, the greater the hazard. For example, the number 4 in the blue health square indicates a very short exposure could cause death or major residual injury. Blue stands for health, red stands for flammability, yellow stands for instability, and white conveys special hazards. Ethanol is represented by a 2 in the blue health square, indicating slight to moderate irritation. It is also represented by a 0 for instability, yellow, and a 3 for flammability, red, indicating high flammability with ignition likely under most conditions. There is no commonly accepted special character, white, for ethanol, though one may be appropriate. The U.S. Department of Labor, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, has adopted hazardous chemical labeling requirements as part of its revision of the Hazard Communication Standard 29 CFR 1910.1200, bringing it into alignment with the United Nations globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals, or GHS. Implementation affects chemical manufacturers, importers, distributors, and employers. NFPA's rating goes from 0, which is least hazardous, to 4, which is most hazardous. The OSHA classification system, on the other hand, is numbered 1 to 4, with 1 being the most severe hazard and 4 being the least severe hazard relating to emergency responder and community exposure. DOT has not adopted GHS, so current DOT placard requirements for packaging and packages remain in effect. Emergency responders need to be aware that the OSHA non-harmonized numerical marking system is exactly opposite of the NFPA 704 standard marking system, which may cause confusion on an incident scene. Emergency responders arriving on any hazardous material incident must visually survey the scene from a safe distance, determine what type of hazardous material identification system is visible, properly interpret the marking system, and initiate the appropriate action plan. Most hazardous material incidents occur during the transportation and transfer operations. Emergency responders should be aware of areas or routes where shipments of ethanol and ethanol-blended fuels routinely pass. Denatured fuel ethanol, E95 to E98, is one of the leading hazardous materials transported by rail. Unit train shipments containing 80 to 100 cars of denatured fuel ethanol are commonly seen on key rail routes leaving from the Midwest and heading to various population and distribution centers throughout the country. To aid in familiarization of commodity patterns, railroads provide traffic flow information to bona fide emergency response agencies. The U.S. DOT Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, publishes the guidebook for conducting local hazardous materials commodity flow studies. This guidebook is designed to support risk assessment, emergency response preparedness, resource allocation, and analysis of hazardous commodity flows across jurisdictions. The second most common mode for ethanol leaving a production facility is an MC306 DOT 406 style cargo tank. Since both gasoline and ethanol blended fuels have very similar physical and chemical characteristics, they will be transported in the same general types of containers and tanks. The most prevalent style of highway transport of the ethanol blended fuels that emergency responders will encounter will be the MC306 DOT 406 or MC407 DOT 407 cargo tanks. The MC306 DOT 406 cargo tanks are non-pressure bulk liquid cargo tanks that come in a variety of sizes and configurations. The most common MC306, DOT406, and cargo tanks have a capacity between 6,000 and 9,500 gallons, depending on regional factors. The MC306, DOT406 cargo tank itself can have up to 7 compartments and is typically constructed out of aluminum. The MC307 DOT407 is a non or low pressure bulk liquid cargo tank. They also come in a variety of sizes and configurations and typically holds between 5 and 7,000 gallons. The MC307 DOT407 can be insulated or uninsulated and contains between 1 and 4 compartments, but some have up to 6. The MC307 DOT407 is typically constructed out of steel. New single tank chassis, MC306 DOT406, supporting triple axles may have an increased capacity up to 12,000 gallons of ethanol blended fuel. Many states within the U.S. have also allowed the use of tandem trailers carrying up to 24,000 gallons of ethanol blended fuels. Recently, the U.S. is experiencing the use of road trains, which are triple tankers with triple axles transporting up to 36,000 gallons of ethanol blended fuels. Ethanol transported in cargo tank trucks are placarded and marked in the same manner as all other hazardous materials. To permit commodity identification, placards must be visible on both sides and both ends of a transport vehicle. Other key characteristics of cargo tank trucks are pressure and vacuum relief devices. They are typically bottom loaded and unloaded and equipped with a vapor recovery system. Safety devices on these cargo tank trucks consist of emergency shutoffs, breakaway valves for shear protection, pressure relief devices, as well as overfill and collision protection. It is strongly encouraged that emergency response organizations review these devices and engage in hands-on and functional exercises to refresh and/or enhance their technical knowledge of these transportation vehicles. Denatured fuel ethanol is regularly transported safely by rail every day. In the transportation of ethanol and ethanol-blended fuels, various routes are utilized: rail to fixed facility, rail directly to cargo tank truck, and rail directly to pipeline. The most common mode of transport for denatured fuel ethanol leaving a production facility is rail transport that displays a 1987 flammable placard. Rail transportation of ethanol and ethanol-blended fuels is used to move product to fixed facilities, cargo tank truck transfer terminals, or pipeline facilities. Some of the ethanol transported by rail will be in non-pressurized DOT 111A100W1 rail tank cars with no insulation or thermal protection. These rail tank cars are also referred to as general service or low pressure rail car. These rail tank cars have a capacity of approximately 30 to 34,000 gallons. Unlike tractor trailer cargo tanks that contain multiple compartments, rail tank cars usually have only one compartment. New regulations for rail tank car construction was published in 2015. New rail tank cars constructed after October 1st, 2015 are required to meet enhanced DOT specification 117 design or performance criteria. Existing rail tank cars must be retrofitted by 2023 in accordance with the DOT prescribed retrofit design or DOT 117 performance standard. Ethanol and ethanol-blended fuels are commonly transported by unit train. A unit train consists of 80 to 100 plus rail tank cars that are all heading for a single destination and carrying the same commodity. For the sake of our discussion, we are referring to denatured fuel ethanol displaying a DOT 1987 placard. Shippers use the same placarding and marking protocols for both highway and railway transport. They are placarded on both sides and both ends. Rail tank car pressure relief devices prevent internal pressure buildup above a specified setting. They open to release pressure and then close once the internal pressure has reduced below the pre-engineered setting of the relief device. The most common mode of transportation for denatured fuel ethanol leaving an ethanol production facility is via rail transport. It is estimated that nearly 70% of all ethanol produced today will travel by rail during the path to its ultimate destination in the retail marketplace. Rail transport can play a significant role in the everyday operations of an ethanol production facility. For example, a 100 million gallon plant geographically co-located next to a rail line can easily expect to receive and ship an average of 36 rail tank cars per day. That entails receiving raw materials and process aids while at the same time shipping fuel ethanol and other co-products to customers. In 2017, the railroad industry started a safety initiative to place emergency notification system, or ENS, signs at each public intersection where the rail crosses a public road throughout the USA. In 2018, this same initiative was to take place for all private road crossings. These signs are typically located within 100 feet of and on both sides of the intersection. Each sign is blue and white in color and has a telephone number and unique intersection identification number. The telephone number gives you direct access to the railroad dispatcher controlling that specific section of rail. The Ask Rail mobile app is a collaborative effort among the emergency response community and all North American Class 1 railroads. The app provides emergency responders with immediate access to accurate, timely data about what type of hazardous materials a rail car is carrying so they can make an informed decision about how to respond to a rail emergency. Ask Rail is a backup resource if information from the train conductor or train consist is not available. For security reasons, only qualified emergency responders can download the app. Shippers of hazardous materials via highway and rail must comply with U.S. Department of Transportation regulations to ensure that emergency responders have an accurate description of transported hazardous materials. For both modes, the required shipping paper entries for ethanol-related products include the amount shipped, the identification number, the proper shipping name, the hazard class, and emergency contact name and phone number. For rail shipments, a hazardous materials response code, HMRC, or standard transportation commodity code, STCC number, will also be present and may aid researching emergency response information. Remember that a contact number will provide 24/7 access to a person knowledgeable about the commodity and detailed information about the product. One of the most frequently seen emergency response contacts is Chemtrec, which can be reached at 1-800-424-9300. For highway transport, shipping papers will be in the cab near the driver. Rail transport requires that a crew member be in possession of the shipping papers. They will usually be carried by the conductor, engineer, or foreman. They can also be obtained from each railroad by contacting their emergency phone number. Some railroad vendors may also be utilizing an electronic manifest or consist system. Most of the denatured fuel ethanol placarded with identification number 1987 is transported from the production facilities to liquid product terminals by rail. Liquid product terminals that do not have rail access receive denatured fuel ethanol by cargo tank truck, freighter, ship, barge, or pipeline. There is some transfer of denatured fuel ethanol from rail tank cars directly to cargo tank trucks called transloading. Increasingly, liquid product terminals have added rail access to their facility. There is some denatured fuel ethanol transported by waterway via freighter ships or barges. At this time, small amounts of denatured fuel ethanol or ethanol-blended fuel are being transported by pipeline. Ethanol shipments via pipeline may increase with greater experience. Emergency responders should be aware of the various modes of transport occurring in their areas. The images show a cargo tank truck terminal loading rack and a rail transloading facility. If your responsibilities include rail tank car loading and/or unloading operations, suggestions for best practices are available from the Association of American Railroads, pamphlet 34 on recommended methods for safe loading and unloading of non-pressure general service and pressure tank cars. Pamphlet 34 and other related resources can be viewed and downloaded at ethanolresponse.com. A transload facility conducts product transfers from mobile tank to mobile tank. In this slide, the image titled Transloading Facility is an example of a rail tank car product transfer to cargo tank truck transload operation. As shown, a portable pump system is in use. This gives the operators flexibility in the unloading process as it can occur at any location within the facility. In this slide, images of a loading rack's facility with fixed fire protection are noted. The transfer pumping system is contained within a concrete cistern to contain any product spill due to a malfunction. The rail tank cars can be simultaneously unloaded to several cargo tank trucks positioned at the loading rack. This increases productivity and efficiency in transporting the ethanol-blended fuel to a bulk liquid storage terminal or retail market. A good resource to assist in preparing for potential transportation-related hazardous material incidents is the Transportation Community Awareness and Emergency Response, or TransCare website noted on this slide. TransCare is a voluntary national outreach organization that focuses on assisting communities to prepare for and respond to a possible hazardous materials transportation incident. TransCare members consist of representatives from chemical manufacturing, transportation, distribution, emergency response agencies, and government agencies. In this module, we learned there are a variety of sources from which an emergency responder can gather information about chemicals involved in a spill or fire incidents. Among them are safety data sheets, SDS, DOT identification numbers and placards, the NFPA 704 labeling system, and shipping papers. Denatured fuel ethanol, E95, E98, is one of the leading hazardous materials shipped by rail. Transportation of this fuel commonly occurs via highways as well.